That was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My heart was racing, my hands trembling around the bouquet. I was about to marry the love of my life, Andrew Miller, the only man who ever made me feel important, whole, truly loved. It was supposed to be the beginning of everything, or at least it should have been. But there at the altar, with every eye on me, something weighed heavily inside. A silent anguish, hard to explain. It felt like, amidst so much love, there was a void pulling me down. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 25 years old, a wedding photographer, and real stories have always been my passion. Ironic, isn't it? Today is my big day, and it feels like I'm living my own drama. I'm about to marry Andrew Miller, the man who stole my heart in the simplest, most genuine way, the only one who ever truly saw me. My parents were there, but their gazes were cold, distant. And then came my sister Rachel's voice, sharp as a blade. Is she really going to marry that loser? As if that wasn't enough, my father muttered with disdain. With so many options, she chose him? And my mother, as always, added in that voice she used to belittle me. I expected more from Emily. Their laughter echoed through the church like a slap. And I stood there, holding back tears and trying to keep my dignity, wondering if they ever truly knew me. But I knew how I felt. I knew who Andrew was. Even trembling inside, I lifted my chin. I chose him. I chose love, even without my family's support. Because, in the end, this was my story. And I was ready to live it. That's when it happened. The church doors opened with a soft sound, and a man walked in with a presence that silenced everyone. At first, I didn't recognize him. But as he got closer, something inside me said, it was him. Andrew. Not the simple man my family mocked, but Andrew Miller. The genius behind one of the world's biggest tech companies. Discreet, reserved, powerful, and completely mine. In that instant, everything changed. Their judgment lost its grip. The love I felt grew, took shape, became unshakable. They never knew who he really was. But I always did. And he's the one I wanted to write every chapter of the rest of my life with. The man who loved me so gently was also the billionaire my family never imagined. When Andrew reached the altar and took my hand, everything changed. The mocking laughter stopped, the whispers vanished, and the silence left behind was filled with surprise and regret. I looked at my parents' and sisters' faces. It wasn't just shock, it was the pain of having underestimated someone. They didn't know that behind Andrew's simplicity was an empire. That the man they thought was ordinary actually had a name powerful enough to move markets. But there he was, holding my hand with tenderness. No arrogance. No need to prove anything. In front of everyone who doubted, I said yes. Not to the billionaire, but to the man who loved me when no one else cared. At the reception, I felt the stares. Curious. Regretful. And inside, my sister's cruel words still echoed. She's marrying a mediocre man. And my mother's scorn, as if loving someone without status was shameful. But then I looked at him. Andrew. Simple, steady, present. And I understood that no one else's opinion mattered. He was my choice. My safe place. As we walked through the hall, I saw the discomfort in my parents' eyes. They were starting to understand. Andrew was never just an ordinary man, and now there was no hiding it. We sat at the table. I could feel the tension in the air. My father, so used to being in control, was lost. For the first time, he didn't know what to say. Until he stood up. The entire hall went silent. I want to congratulate the newlyweds, he began, his voice trembling. I spent my whole life thinking I knew what was best, that I could judge who was worthy of my daughter. But today I see that she chose someone better than I ever could have imagined. My heart tightened. I never thought I'd hear that from him. It was more than a speech, it was acknowledgement. A gesture. An attempt to make up for years of judgment. Maybe I was too quick to make assumptions, he said, looking at Andrew. I didn't see what was right in front of me. And then came that small nod. Simple. Subtle. but full of meaning. It wasn't a direct apology, but it was sincere. And in that moment, it was enough. I felt something inside me loosen, an old knot coming undone. For the first time, my father saw me as a woman who chose with her heart and didn't regret it. When my father sat down, I instinctively looked at my mother. She hadn't said a single word all night, but there was something in her eyes, different. Doubt, discomfort, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of change. My mother had always been the one with all the answers, the one who defined right and wrong with the firm voice of someone who never admits they're wrong. But that night, in front of Andrew, the man she once called unworthy, she seemed shaken, uncertain. For the first time, something in her demeanor was crumbling, as if deep down, she knew she had misjudged him. I saw not just wounded pride in her, but vulnerability. She'd spent her life trying to control everything, including us. And now, in the face of my happiness, of my love, she seemed to realize that none of it mattered. Not status, not appearances. What mattered was right in front of her. And she couldn't deny it. The party went on with music, toasts, and forced smiles. But the atmosphere had changed. It wasn't just a celebration, it was a turning point. The truth had come to light, and with it, the masks had fallen. Yes, there were still looks. I could still feel judgment whispering between the lines. But something was growing inside me. A quiet confidence. A silent strength. Andrew, always calm, was a reflection of that. He never needed to prove anything. His silence was answer enough. And still, he disarmed everyone. No speeches. No displays. Just by being who he always was. During our first dance as husband and wife, I felt it deeply. The world around us faded away. There was only the two of us. He gently pulled me close, his arms around my waist. I rested my head on his chest and listened to his heartbeat steady, strong. "You're doing better than you think," he whispered. "I'm here, and I always will be." In that moment, I understood everything. This wasn't just a wedding. It was the beginning of our real story. And no one, not even my family, could erase that. But the night still had more to reveal. As the hours passed, the energy in the room shifted. The initial lightness gave way to a strange silence. Uncomfortable. I looked at my family gathered at the table, once so proud, so sure of themselves. Now, they were quiet, wordless, defenseless. They were finally facing the truth. That smug certainty my family once felt about being right had vanished. What remained was discomfort. You could see it in how they avoided my eyes, the nervous fidgeting of their hands, the failed attempts to regain control. They weren't just surprised by who Andrew really was. They were shattered by their own convictions. They thought I was impulsive, foolish, that I'd throw away a promising future for a mediocre love. But their mistake was judging love by its wrapping. It was never about status, never about his last name. It was about how he looked at me, how he respected me, how he made me feel safe, even when everything else was falling apart. And in that hall, between clinking glasses and uncomfortable silences, it became clear they hadn't just underestimated Andrew. They had underestimated the woman I became beside him. For so long, I tried to fit their mold, to meet their standards. But now, standing next to the man who saw all of me, I was free, strong, and, for the first time, I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I saw Andrew on the other side of the room, surrounded by people, but his eyes were on me. Always on me. And without saying a word, he said everything. "We're in this together. Whatever comes, we'll face it." His calm surrounded me. Before, maybe I would have tried to ease the stares, explain away the discomfort. But now I knew. This was our moment. Our story. And no one else had a voice here. With time, the murmur of the party gave way to an attentive silence. My father stood again, this time with a glass in hand. The room fell still, and he began, his voice steadier, though still searching for courage in the words. I always believed it was my role to make the best decisions to protect my family. But today, seeing my daughter holding hands with the man she chose, I realized something I took too long to see. He paused, looked at Andrew, then at me. Sometimes, the right decisions aren't the ones that please others. They're the ones that come from in here, he said, pointing to his chest. My heart swelled. Then he finished. I've always been proud of the strong and determined daughter you are. But today, I'm also proud of the man you chose to have by your side. It's clear that there's something real between you. Something that can't be bought, can't be measured, only felt. And for that, I want to say, congratulations. It was the recognition I had waited for my entire life, not for validation, but because, in that moment, he finally saw who I was. And who Andrew had always been. The room fell silent for a moment, absorbing my father's words. Then, a soft and sincere applause began to spread. It wasn't over the top, but it was the recognition I needed, not an explicit apology, but a quiet victory. Not over him, but over myself. The woman I was now didn't seek validation. I had learned to trust what I felt, to follow my heart, even when no one else understood. And in that moment, I realized that was my true freedom. I looked at my mother, waiting for some kind of reaction. She was still there, silent, but something had shifted. In her eyes, a barely perceptible glimmer told me that, maybe, she was beginning to understand. She had always believed she knew what was best for everyone, but now, faced with everything, she seemed to be questioning her own certainties. For years, my mother had tried to shape the version of a daughter she wanted. But that night, it became clear, I was no longer the daughter she tried to control. I didn't know what would come next, but strangely, for the first time, that didn't scare me. A sense of calm was growing inside me. I wasn't trying to please them anymore. I no longer sought approval. I had made my choice, and it was mine alone. I had found my truth and, more than that, built my own home founded on love, respect, and genuine partnership. As the night continued, the music still played, but now it felt like a milestone. The initial tension had faded, and in the silence, my family finally seemed to start understanding. They had misjudged, underestimated Andrew. But now, they saw who he really was, a successful man, yes, but also calm, generous, and full of integrity. And more importantly, he was the man I had chosen. And in the end, that was what truly mattered. Hand in hand, we left the reception, walking into the cool night. The cold air brushed our faces, like a gentle reminder that we were beginning something new. Behind us, whispers from the guests still floated in the air, trying to make sense of what was behind that wedding. But, unlike before, it no longer affected me. Everything I needed was right beside me, Andrew, and the life we were building together. We arrived at our new home, a place that once felt like a distant, almost impossible dream. Now it was real. It was ours. A home, just for us. No one else would set the rules anymore. Now we could write our own story without interference, without masks. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Social media was filled with headlines about the quiet billionaire married to a woman deemed too ordinary for him. But for us, none of that mattered. It wasn't about headlines or the narrative people tried to impose on us. It was about the life we chose to live together, a life of lightness, genuine love, honest laughter, and the freedom to be who we are without filters or performances. As for my family, change came slowly. My father was the first to come around. In a private conversation, his voice carried a sincerity I had never heard before. He didn't give a grand speech or beg for forgiveness, but what he said was enough. It was honest, and that was all I needed. My mother, as I expected, took more time. She had always believed she could control everything, even the course of my life. But this moment forced her to face a truth she couldn't manipulate. And through that process, I discovered something essential. I no longer needed her approval, not hers, not anyone's. I had chosen my own path, and for the first time, I was truly proud of it.